Okay. Okay. So last time there was something about the Zoom formatting that threw me, in that I think that they've changed their formatting. This time it seemed easier, so I think I understand what they've done. Um, at the very end of last week, I forgot who asked this question. I think it was Jackie asked the question about what is the difference between a triptych and one painting. Why do a triptych? Why do one painting? So I said that in answer to that, um, I'd be going ahead of myself because I the answer is in this class tonight. So 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 I'll be getting to that in a second. But then there was something else I thought of last week when I should have asked you this at the end. I'm curious to know if you could raise your hand. Um, let's say the first three paintings that I showed, the first one of Van Eyck. How many of you knew that painting before? Well, it's very, very few, very few. We're talking three, four. So now the second one, the Bosch painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights. How many of you knew that painting before? So that's more, that's like six or seven. Then the next one, the Grunewald painting, the Isenheim Altarpiece in Colmar, France. How many of you knew that painting? It's very little. That's two, three. Um, okay, okay. So in any case, it seems to me that this is an area where you're not familiar with these, and it really is an important area. So I'm going to speak freeform about the triptych concept or idea, and then freeform about the Van Eyck painting. And I don't want to spend much more than a half hour doing that, because then I want to show you the images, and then I want you to have enough time at the end to respond or ask questions or interact. So this is a lot of ground to cover in a half hour. Um, so, um, so a triptych is a painting divided into three sections. Um, there is a tradition in early triptychs that they are religious, and the theme is religious, and you could almost say that it comes from the Trinity. Okay. Um, but the form of the triptych is not limited to religious subjects or the Trinity. Um, a book that I recommend or that I have um, is this book here, which is called Opening Doors. And it's a book, it's a bit expensive, but I bought it, but you don't have to buy it. It's called Opening Doors. It's by a writer named Lynn Jacobs. Lynn Jacobs. Okay. So I came across this book in an interesting way. Um, I was walking in the Louvre Museum, and their bookstore is amazing. It's one of the old school bookstores. If you will note what is happening in museum bookstores, it's being full of tinker toys, tinker toys rather than books. So there are very few museum bookstores that have this quality. One actually that does is the Neue Gallery. That is a fantastic bookstore. But what's happened is they're showing all these gadgets and things, not books. Anyway, so I was walking around in the bookshop at the Louvre, and I came across this book because it was facing out and being displayed, so you could see the cover. So this is the cover, and it's a book which deals with Netherlandish triptychs.
Mm.
Okay, so I thought it was fascinating, and I ended up buying it. And I ended up also meeting the art historian who wrote the book because she teaches at um, the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville. And there was an event that took place where we had a conversation and she interviewed me and a conversation on the triptych form and on my triptych, which was on loan to that school or was part of a traveling exhibit that went to that school. Um, so she's very interesting. And the last book on my work, very skinny book, but with very big, large reproductions, has the text of that interview. So the reason I'm mentioning this is that some of the information that I have on the triptych, credit should be given to Lynn Jacobs, who um, explores this idea. Um, so what Jacobs is saying in this book is that in some way the triptych acts as a book. It's the analogy to a book, and she speaks in her book, Opening Doors, of the subordinating center. Subordinating center is a very interesting idea. So the central panel becomes a focus for devotion and contemplation. So the center panel is very important. And in for instance, in my triptych, the central panel deals with art and deals with the creation of art. Now, I didn't do that because I read her book. I read her book years after, and what I did has nothing to do with her ideas, but it is exactly her ideas. Okay, but it has nothing to do with it. Um, so she says um, triptychs weren't originally defined by their tripartite nature, but rather as paintings with doors. Paintings with doors, a very interesting idea. So instead of doors, you could say paintings with leaves or paintings with thresholds. Thresholds. So the triptych form is linked in her mind, and I think she's entirely right, to turning pages as you would turn a page in a book. And you should understand that in these early triptychs, in the triptychs that were particularly religious, the wings are open and closed, open and closed. So when the triptych is closed, what you see are grayer images, which are grisailles, grisaille, Grisalles, grisaille. So grisaille means uh, uh, in muted color or in one color. So it would be like grays or gray greens. Okay. So that's how the triptych looks. And on certain holidays or certain events, the triptychs are open and they're open to the interior, which has a lot of color. Okay? So they're open and closed. The first time I saw um, the Ghent altarpiece, the Van Eyck painting that we're going to be speaking about, a guard came out every 20 minutes or so and opened the painting, and then 20 minutes later closed it. 20 minutes later opened it. 20 minutes later closed it. Now, if you go to Ghent, and Rich said that he was there in October, it's not opened and closed anymore. It's separated and put behind glass in a kind of box behind glass. But I liked the way I saw it because I liked the idea that it repeated the way it was meant to be seen by opening and closing it. Um, so the doors and the opening and closing speaks to a conversation between different worlds or between different subjects or different thresholds. So um, I got this from uh, Lynn Jacobs's book. In Christianity, Christ's body might have an analogy in a door, dead and alive, human and divine, open and closed. So the opening and closing is a big thing regarding this artistic form. Um, ah, in many of the triptychs, in one area, there is a depiction of the donor, Donor. And this is quite interesting and important. So the donor came from a well-to-do family, and it, you could argue that the donor was buying their way into the next world, okay? By by their being included in a great work of art or a major work of art or an important work. And in the Ghent altarpiece, there is a donor, okay? And in a book like what Lynn Jacobs wrote, she writes a little bit about who the donors are and possibly the motivation for this. It's a very interesting idea. Um, so nowadays, um, the donor would put their name on a wing of a hospital or a building or part of a museum. Okay, but this is somewhat different, And it also has to do, the beauty of this has to do with the connection of the donor to very extremely beautiful and strong art. Um, okay, so that's interesting. So the triptych is also has a narrative form to it. It's not entirely narrative. It's but there's something about it that is narrative. For myself, something about the triptych makes me think of a novel. It has the feeling of a novel, but not just any novel, a very large novel, a novel that exceeds 500 pages, 5 to 700, 800 pages. So now, maybe later in the term, I'll develop some theory about this. But for myself, um, there are works that I have done which are like what I'm describing in the triptych, which has the equivalent of being a large scale novel. Then there are works that I've done which are like novellas. Then there are works that are like short stories. Then there are works that are like poems. So that's the way I see it, but that's just for me. But I think that's a good way of looking at it. So these first three, or actually, if I could include myself, these first four, which are the ones we're studying, I think have an analogy in a novel. Um, so in terms of the Van Eyck, uh, you could almost say it's not just about a novel, but it's also symphonic. Symphonic. It's a big idea with lots of uh, parts. And it is also extremely architectural because of the divisions and an overriding architecture that embraces the totality. So it's an engrossing overlying architecture subdivided into sections. So it's a visual world that has chapters, chapters or separations. So there's an interesting German word that I would think of that describes this idea, and it's called Weltanschauung. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm pretty close to it. So Weltanschauung is Weltanschauung. So Weltanschauung means a world point of view, a world point of view. It doesn't have to mean, it means a world point of view from the point of view of the writer, the artist, an encompassing world point of view. And to me, in certain of these early triptychs, and I would also like to include myself in this, but but let's say the first three, um, there is an ecstatic element. Ecstatic, whatever you feel that word means, I feel that's in these triptychs. There's an ecstatic um, resolution of meaning. So the triptychs are very complicated and dense. So Jacobs makes a very interesting point. I was just reading some of this in the last few days. Um, that the triptych form structures and generates meaning. In other words, within the form, within these subdivisions, there is a meaning. That's a very interesting idea. So within the separations and the conversations that take place, by its very nature, there is meaning. Now, there is a German word which I have forgotten, but maybe Susan, maybe you could help me with it. It's a word that describes uh, Brecht and an idea of that Brecht had, which is called total theater. Do you know the word for that? It's one of these words where there's like two or three words together, and it means encompassing total theater. I think there's a word that is used for that. But in any case, we could use the English word total theater. So, so this is what I read about total theater. Total theater is characterized by its synthesis of multiple art forms, including dance, drama, music, and visual arts. This integration aims to create a seamless, immersive experience that fully engages the audience's senses, breaking the barriers between performers and spectators. Let me read that again to you. Um, Total theater is characterized by its synthesis of multiple art forms, including dance, drama, music, and visual arts. This integration aims to create a seamless, immersive experience that fully engages the audience's senses, breaking the barriers between performers and spectators. And I think what Brecht means is that you are there and surrounded by this uh, work of art. You are encompassed and surrounded by it. And it, it's an amazing thing to accomplish or do. Oh, and one more thing about the breakdown of the connection of the visual with writing. Um, Something which is meant to be a short story, to me, can't be pumped up to be a 500-page novel because you would know that right away when you read it. You would know that this is the wrong form, that it's just pumped up. It's um, egotistical. Um, so these triptychs are the right size for what the artist is trying to do. So you can't take any idea and make it into the ideas that I've described as a triptych. It has to be it has to be the right idea, a very complicated idea. That's very important. Okay. And going the other way, an idea like the Ghent Altarpiece shouldn't be made into a short story. That wouldn't make any sense. Okay. Um, okay. Okay. So, oh, we're almost at 30 minutes now. Okay. I have to
6 minutes left.
I have to just keep going a little bit more. So the Ghent altarpiece is located in Ghent, in Belgium, and um, this is a Flemish painting. So Flanders or Flemish is a subdivision of what is contemporary Belgium. And Flemish painting um, has certain characteristics which are very finely realized, generally, very fine, almost naturalistic, but not quite. So the Ghent Altarpiece, you could say, is a meditation on Christian imagery, on the Annunciation, on the Lamb, on Adam and Eve. Van Eyck was thought to be the inventor of oil painting. Okay, so his dates are 1390. This is amazing. 1390 to 1441. This painting was painted between 1425 and 1432. Um, you could make an argument that Van Eyck was the inventor of oil painting, and oil painting, sounds absurd, but you could make an argument that oil painting didn't progress much past what Van Eyck did. Okay, it's that extraordinary. So the Van Eyck painting is considered one of Western art's, in terms of painting, first masterpieces. Okay, and I think it's hands down correct. The painting and all of Van Eyck's work is very touched and special. It is as though most artists have two little containers that they work from. In one container, there is turpentine, which thins the paint. And in the other container, there is a medium, which gives the paint luster and body and a kind of aura. But in Van Eyck's case, there's a third cup. And I would say the third cup, and I'm saying this as a non believer, the third cup contains God. Okay? So when he mixed his paints and he dipped his brush into the turpentine, and then he dipped his brush into the medium, then he also dipped his brush into the little container that had God in it. Okay? So he mixed all those things together, and you have his work. So the work is, to me, touched and mysterious, hard to define. God is present in the details. Now, the most amazing part of with Van Eyck is this is quite incredible. He signed his work, um, I guess, with his name, but he also had an aphorism, and the aphorism was signed in Dutch, I think. Um, as best I can,
Hmm.
not as I would, not as I would, as best I can.
In Greek, I think, on his self-portrait anyway.
Yeah, I actually saw it. It wasn't Greek. It was
No.
Dutch. But in any case, it doesn't matter. Um, and as best I can is an amazing thing for him to write. Um, okay, so at this point,
Mhm.
let's, if you have a question, maybe we could take one or two questions. Then I want to show you the images. Uh, question? No? Okay. Okay. So let me see if I could do this. Um, okay. So um, this is the first image that you saw last time. And see if I could make this a little bigger.
All right.
Okay. So whenever you look at paintings or drawings or works of art, sculpture or whatever, you should be keyed up on the size of it, the scale. So I think that this is, if I remember right, 12 by 17 feet. So it is a very large painting. And it's an unusual painting for Van Eyck in that um, his paintings are very, very small. And for instance, the painting that is at the Metropolitan Museum is, I'm going to show that to you later. That's the diptych that I showed in the last class. That painting is, for all the things in the painting is 22 inches high by 7 and 3/4 inches wide. Two panels, each one that same size. 22 and a quarter by 7 and 3/4. So that's much different than this. Uh,
Simon,
yeah, yeah.
uh, I have a picture from my trip last fall that I might be able to share. I don't know if John's, it seems like I might be able to share it. Because you have the share button on it.
Uh,
It will
I
give you
don't,
a sense.
I
It gives
don't
you
think, I don't think that you can do that. I think that I can do that.
let me just try for a second. Oh, no, now I can't. But before I could. Oh, I know why. You're sharing. When you're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
sharing, I could share. That's what
Can you
happened.
can you just describe that for a second?
It gives you a sense of the scale of the triptych
Oh,
that I have.
I have something that'll give you that.
Okay.
I have
'Cause
something.
it
Thanks.
has people kind of
Yeah,
on the base of it, and it's the one that's behind the glass. So it's
Rich, I have that. I
yeah.
have that. Okay,
Okay.
so this this image that you're looking at is the inside of uh, this painting. It, now, during the period of time that Van Eyck lived, and the intentions at that time was that this part wasn't shown and the exterior part was shown. So the next slide, um, oh, going the other way. The next slide, this is what Rich is referring to. So here you could see that two people are looking at this. And if this is the way that I saw it last, the whole thing is enclosed in a glass partition, and you have to go and walk around to the back to see the back of this or the outside. So you can see how big this is, and you can see the way that it encompasses the people. It engage it's the it's the people don't seem to write about this, but it seems pretty obvious that it's like, I mean, of course, Van Eyck didn't know anything about Brecht, and he wouldn't have thought of this, but it is like total theater. If I got that right, this is like total theater. It's total theater for uh, a religious or a godlike cause. Here's another shot of this.
Simon, I heard a video that suggested that it might have been mechanized and it might even have been set to music at some points. So this would support this kind of
Uh,
multi media presentation idea that you're suggesting.
yeah, that could be. That could be. So this is the uh, well, this is the inside that you see here now, and this is the outside. So you
Yeah.
can see the outside has much more muted colors. Let me make this a little smaller so you could see the whole thing. Yeah, so this is the whole outside. Now
So
you
Simon, so that's what it looks like when those side panels are closed. That's what you see?
yes, yes. And you can see there on the exterior bottom the two donors. And let me see on the
Is the back of the middle panel also painted this way?
I'm not sure. What do you mean? This,
Well,
this is the whole back.
Well, we're seeing the back of the wings now.
seeing the back of the wings, they're
She
folded.
means the center panel,
Yeah,
which would be
can
on the
explain.
other side of this. Is that surface painted? That's the
Uh,
question.
it's a good question. I thought this was the whole back.
I
No.
think it's not painted. I believe that is the case.
Rich, do you remember this?
Well, yes, I do remember it. I'm trying to figure it out too, whether it folds up so that it covers the center panel. But I think you just walk behind the large, uh, you know, collection, the triptych, and you see these on probably
Yeah,
two
this
of the back.
I
Yeah.
can tell you for a fact that it wasn't painted on the back because the donor also built a separate space that was designated precisely for this painting to be displayed in it, and you couldn't get to the back of it when it was
uh,
placed in that space in the
I see.
proper
I
way.
see. I see. Very good. Very good. Really good.
They've moved it. It's not. It's in the same building, but it's not in that space anymore
Yeah.
for the safety of the
Yeah.
piece.
Excellent. Excellent.
By the way, Simon, do you know what they call when they paint a statue in a grisaille? You know,
I don't know the name of it, but
yeah, but
but the yeah. Let me just keep going.
that was a skill.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Let me just keep going.
Mhm.
These I think I have close-ups of these later, but for now, these next to the donors, there are paintings of sculptures, and they're paintings of sculptures in niches. So the whole thing is painted, and then they're in frames. Then above um, the Annunciation on the left and right, and the the paintings in the middle. Um, so they are real and sculptural. The ones at the top, I don't know what they are. Um, let me just keep going.
Uh,
So this is a detail of that you just saw before,
mhm.
and this is a detail again what you just saw before.
Is this the outside?
This is the outside.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the outside. So so you have to imagine the outside has color, but it's more muted. And coming back to the inside, I got a few details that give you a sense of the color and touch of the artist. Uh, Last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I remember we studied Piero della Francesca,
Mhm.
and there was one area in one of his paintings which had women singing. Uh, and this time around, I saw a connection between this painting and the Piero of the women singing.
Mm.
I didn't notice that before. Um, the painting, the actual application of the paint is phenomenal. I mean, mind-bogglingly phenomenal. So the touch that the painting gets to be wood, to be a gown, to be hair, to be a mouth, to be the musical instrument, the organ, to be the hand. Um, the touch is simply amazing, mind-boggling. Um, eh, Also, in putting this together, I was thinking about how the artist must have had a kind of photographic memory or a memory for the delineation of texture or something that he got out of that third container of X, because I doubt if he could have had all these people posing all at once or all of these things in front of him. Maybe, not sure, but his his perception of all of this is it's hard to take it in. I mean, it's encyclopedic. Um, um, okay, so it's another detail. So these are details of the paintings of Adam and Eve, and they're very, very striking. So this is a small part.
Oh, Simon, you're not sharing your screen at the moment, so we can't see what you're referring to.
Yes, he is.
Is he?
I
Oh,
can
then
see
I'm
it.
doing something wrong.
Okay, so everyone has screen sharing. Everyone is seeing this image, right?
Yes.
Oh,
Okay, okay.
interesting.
All right. Thanks, John. Um, okay, so this is actually a fairly large painting by Van Eyck, much larger than his other paintings. Oh, also, it, there is uh, there's some enigma about the role of Jan van Eyck. I say Jan van Eyck, but it's probably pronounced Jan. But Van Eyck and his brother, whose name is Hubert. And there are some people who think that Hubert began all of this and Jan continued. There's some thought that Hubert constructed the frames. It's not clear, but in any case, let's say Jan van Eyck. But you should know that there's some controversy here. So here, the two characters appear together by the the painting being open and closed to get this juxtaposition. Oh, also, one thing I forgot about this is that this painting is really um, a polyptych, which is many panels. Polyptych. So a polyptych means many panels, but the reason
Oh,
this is a triptych is that all the many panels are tripartite, tripartite. And okay, so here's another detail. Absolutely great, great portrait, great, highly personal. Curious the way that this is very naturalistic and yet very abstract at the same time. So these figures might be 4 feet high. And in person, uh, uh, especially the one of Eve is so striking. Um, Rich, can you say something about this since you saw it recently?
I, when you said 4 feet, my first thought was maybe even longer or bigger than 4 feet, and
Could be, could be.
they're on the edges of the composition. And
Yeah,
you're saying they fold in together like that?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Um,
the reason that I mentioned, oh, I didn't mention this. So this triptych um, can fold middle, left, and right, but actually the way it's constructed is that there are three sets of paintings, lower, middle, and higher, and each one of those three sets can be folded separately. And there must have been some reason for it to be set up like that. Um, there's some thought that the exterior panels could be opened perpendicular to the middle, and there's some thought that it would be opened all flat. But the three upward sections or the three vertical sections could be opened and closed separately. So this is one possibility. This section, the way it is on the left, this part.
Simon,
Yeah,
can you hear me? And I know some people reference the Siena exhibition at the Met, kind of like the beginning of painting, in
yeah,
the modern painting. And one thing I think we shouldn't lose sight of is that this is the equivalent, sort of a parallel of sort of the beginning of painting um, for devotional purposes or for
yeah, yeah,
kind of decorative purposes or whatever. And one thing that also, I think I read somewhere that sculpture occupied a bigger place in terms of church work and artwork, and doing a painting that also represented sculpture was almost magical to people. They couldn't believe it,
yes,
that
yes.
someone could pull that off.
But
Um,
but if you saw the exhibit of Sienese art at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, um, I don't mean to express positive and negative, but this painting is so much more sophisticated than Sienese art.
oh yeah.
Sienese art is extremely beautiful, but
Mhm.
it has a sort of innocence about it, a naivete.
Mhm.
This also has an innocence about it, but in terms of its achievement of form and realization of form,
Mhm.
it's mind-boggling. Um,
Mhm.
um, let me just keep going.
Mhm.
Um, so this is a detail of from the middle panel, um, and you could see all of the way that the textures are created, um, the hand, the tapestry, the jewels, pearls, rubies, um, rays of light. So this is the donor, and I believe his wife. You'll see his wife soon as well. Um, I think the next, not the next one doesn't have a donor, but I'm not sure if I remember this right, but maybe the Grunewald doesn't, but many of the others have donors. Um, wouldn't it be amazing to be the donor for this painting? Wouldn't that be something? I mean, we're not talking about Elon Musk. We're talking about, you know, an amazing achievement to be part of the creating of this work. Um, simply amazing. So this is the donor and his wife. And in many of these paintings and through the next 100 years, there are very interesting ways that the architecture is painted next to actual architecture. So in this case, the frames are architectural elements. In many of the churches, they are spires, or I don't know what the term would be, but they're actually architectural elements that hold the church up or hold up arches. Those are painted, not here, but those are painted, and then the continuation of that is a painted on a flat on a flat surface, a piece of architecture, which then leads you into a particular scene. Um, so I am not versed in the religious underpinning of this painting, but and I'm not particularly concerned about that. But if one was a student of Christianity, a student of religion, or a professor of religion, or a cleric, probably they could point out to you different things about what's taking place here and the meaning of the Lamb, which is Christ, and the meaning of these different events and who these different people are. Um, I look at it and I'm just swept away by the world that this has created.
These are said to be saints, I believe, that are surrounding the altar here.
Uh, you got me. You got me. So, but I wouldn't say that ignorance is bliss. I would just say that the energy that comes off this painting is what I am relating to. That it has an aura about it that is incredible, really. Um, um, there's an interesting discussion in various articles about the lamb and about the way the lamb uh, looks very human and almost seems to have a human face. I'm not entirely sure what that means, but that's what I've read. Um, and it's very interesting. And the rays are very interesting. The eyes on this animal are very human.
Yeah, they're forward facing. When they restored the painting, they found that a restorer 100 years after the original had painted over it and repositioned the ears and the eyes
Wow.
because the original was too human looking because the eyes are forward facing and the ears are
Wow.
not and so the person who repainted it raised the ears and
Wow.
made it look like a lamb.
Yeah.
But that's
Wow.
not what Van Eyck painted. He painted
Yeah.
what you see there.
Yeah. Wow. That's very interesting. Let me just keep going. Ah, okay. So I don't remember where this detail is in the painting. We could go back and look and find it. But what interests me here is that um, the areas in the distance are highly realized. So um, these leaves and flowers, if you were a, a botanist, would be of a particular tree. The building is a particular building, and the deep distance is probably a landscape that you could find. So these areas really have the Van Eyckian touch of being realized, but yet differentiated, uh, highly particular. So I had once thought of a theory, which is kind of crazy, but I'll just mention it because I believe in this. The theory of the flying eyeball. So uh, certain artists can take their eyeball and project it out into the distance. Then the eye looks at a particular part of the landscape, takes it in, and then withdraws back into the eye of the artist. And um, for some stupid reason, I think that I can do that. And but he is superb at this idea. So if you look at his paintings and keep going out, 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 the only way you could really describe this as is as an eyeball that roams out in the distance. I'm I'm speaking metaphorically, okay? That goes out into the distance, absorbs the information, and then pulls back. Okay. Um, okay. So in a detail like this, um, all of these different plants and variegated forms are super specific, and the people here represent a specific group. The buildings also probably you can pick out if you knew about Flemish buildings and landscapes, they probably are a particular landscape. Same here. So this is probably a very small part of a much larger painting. Um, so in this scene, um, I am ignorant of who these people are, who these various groups are, and my presentation is limited in that sense. But the the ability to depict all this is mind-boggling. So this is a whole cast of characters delineated in a fairly small space with this deep landscape, and it's just stunning, um, stunning uh, reality.
Simon, you talked about Hubert, and I think they have concluded that some of the figures in that previous image that you just showed on the left as we're viewing it, some of these are painted very differently to others. So the thought is that Hubert began, he sketched out the whole work and began painting some of these figures, and then he died, and Jan finished the work.
So
But it could be that Hubert's work is there, in that grouping on the left.
Well said, very well said. So there are lots of questions you could ask about this, which is um, the architectural construction of this painting, of the whole thing. Who decided on this? The various panels, who decided on this? Was it Van Eyck or was it um, a Christian philosopher or cleric that worked with Van Eyck? Did Van Eyck know all of this, or was he working with other people who made suggestions about this? Um, that's an interesting point of discussion, which I have not heard raised. But the choice of the subject matter and the choice of which panels go where is fascinating.
Simon,
Yeah, yeah,
you wanted to know that it was 8 o'clock. It's a
yeah,
little
yeah, yeah. Well, I'm almost finished with
okay.
it. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Um, okay. So this is this is a detail of the exterior part, and this is probably the Annunciation, and you could see that view out the window,
Oh, yeah.
which goes way out there, and the sense of it being like sculpture.
Mhm.
Um,
Gotcha.
so I decided to show. Um, I didn't mean to be abrupt about this, but I decided to show some um, work that was not in this painting, but is also by Van Eyck. And so this is a very well-known painting, which is located at the National Gallery in London and is called The Marriage of Arnolfini, uh, Arnolfini. So this painting has the same dazzling verisimilitude that the Ghent Altarpiece has. So if you look at the dog,
Yeah.
or the the fur coat, or the chandelier, or the oranges, or the woman's dress, or the mirror, or just about any area has that eyeball that picks up and is intimate with the textures. This is of a certain type of painting is almost unexcelled. Um, this is the painting that's at the Metropolitan Museum,
Yes.
and it is each panel is 7 3/4 inches wide. Your hand, uh, this distance on your hand might be
Bigger
the
for some of
width
us.
the width of this painting. The width of this painting. This is incredible. This is like mind-boggling. And I also found this detail. So this is the end of the world, which is an interesting juxtaposition with the Ghent altarpiece. But I also found this detail of this painting. So imagine that the width here is 7 3/4 inches.
Huh.
We're talking about each of these figures as being maybe a half an inch wide.
Maybe. Yeah.
This is one of my favorite paintings at the Metropolitan Museum. This one. Now, this is a detail of a painting, another painting of Van Eyck, but it's very typical in this way. Um, you see the figure, and then you see this landscape juxtaposed with the figure. And you see, if you can imagine this eyeball floating around, uh, uh, you can see the understanding of the landscape as it goes out to those mountains, going out like 10 miles to the buildings, to the hills, to the undulation. And for instance, this building right here, you could see the windows in it, and these windows in here,
Mhm.
uh, and a little building here. Um,
Okay.
this is really remarkable. This building, these buildings here, this landscape out here, and this very distant landscape
I
out
will
here.
join you shortly.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold on. Hold on. Let me finish this. Um, so this is a smallish. I don't know if you'd call it a study, but it's not a study. It was something that he did and then stopped. He stopped at this point. So it gives you a sense of the underpainting or the underdrawing for one of these paintings. And here, here it's in an in-between state of drawing painting. But this drawing was probably done with silver point, a very fine metallic line, and then he started to brush in the paint towards the top, and then he left it for some reason. Not clear, but he left it. I thought this would be interesting to show. And then this painting, um, so this painting, I all of a sudden I just forgot. I know the name of the man, but I don't remember what it was that he did. But it was like he was maybe a Christian missionary or someone who was completely dedicated to what he was doing. His name is Baudin, Baudin, then Delanoy, DE small, and then L capital Ennoy. So this painting is much bigger, and the painting is. I should have brought out the whole painting, but it's much bigger. The whole painting is 10.5 by 7.75. So this head, it could be 1 inch high. This is really remarkable. Could be 1 inch high. So for my Royal Imaginary cigar, uh, as a gift to you, this painting, this part makes an appearance later in this term in another painting. For my Royal Imaginary cigar, which I will present to you uh, publicly, who can tell me where it makes another appearance?
Your triptych.
Is that you, Carol?
That was me.
Okay, so
You can
you
it's a
have
dog.
I'm transferring you now my imaginary cigar.
It's great. I've got it.
Okay, good, good,
Accidentally
good.
smoked.
Now let me see if I could get back to where I was. Oh, okay. So I'm gonna do stop share.
Okay.
Now we're back, so I can see all of you. And I want to say one more thing, and then you should ask questions or participate. I first saw this painting. We were living in Germany, and uh, uh, I had been fortunate enough to receive a Fulbright grant. And the Fulbright grant was wonderful, but it had one problem. The problem was the first 2 months I was sent, and Renee, but we were both sent to a language school in Beauport on the Rhine. Absolutely beautiful location. But the problem was I'm not good with languages, and I really don't care about languages, and I didn't really care about learning German. And it was making me absolutely crazy to have to do the German. So uh, I was getting so wrought up and worked up about this that we decided to travel to Bonn, Bad Godesberg, where the Fulbright people were located. And I met with a very amazing man named Ulrich Littmann, who was the head of the Fulbright Commission. And I said to him that I can't do this. It's making me crazy. I came to do drawings and paintings, and now I'm here doing this. It's just too much. And he was very calm, and he treated me in a very calm way. And he said, you know, it's going to really help. It's going to give you some ability to speak to people, so on. And I said, but it's making me crazy. I can't do this. I can't. I started to cry. And he said, oh, and he looked like what I imagined Captain Ahab to look like. Okay, he looked like Habakkuk from Donatello's sculpture. Fantastic looking fellow. And he said, it's don't be so wrought up about it. Take be 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 more generous. Think about it. You'll be able to speak to people and so on. Anyway, we got out of there, and I said to Renee, I feel so depressed about this. How far is Ghent from where we are? So Renee figured it out on the map, and I said, Renee, let's go to Ghent. That'll be the antidote for this terrible meeting. And she said, yeah, let's do that. So we drove, and we literally drove all night. And we drove, I can't remember how long it took, not too long. The distances are very close. So we drove from the eastern part of, no, the western part of Germany to Ghent in Belgium. And we arrived at 5 o'clock in the morning. And that church opens at, say, 8 in the morning. So we had to wait around. Oh, no, we slept in the car. Then we got up, it was 5 o'clock in the morning, and we had to wait until 8 o'clock. And I always wanted to see this painting. So then we went at 8 o'clock in the morning to see this. And the guards were there, and they turned the painting, and they kept turning it open, closed, open, closed. And I must say that my knees got weak looking at this. It was like a major league experience. Um, so I don't know if I'm conveying this well to you or not, but that's um, my overview. And if you have a question or something to add, which I'd like to hear from other people, that's why I can see all of you. Can you say something? Uh, I wonder if Susan, yeah.
I I just looked up just to finish with the Brecht. It's Gesamtkunstwerk, which just means total art work. I put it in the chat. So
And
you were right. It's 3 words.
that's the term that Brecht used?
Yes.
Yeah. Say it again.
Gesamtkunstwerk.
Okay. Okay.
I
Well,
was in Germany when Simon was, and I really liked that German school.
uh, yes, you had the opposite feeling because
I did.
that's your baby. Okay.
That's my
But
baby.
but that's not mine. Uh, but I liked being there and I liked the German influence and all that, but the language was too much, too much.
Yeah.
Um, so, but so Brecht thought of theater in that way. That
Mhm.
and I was thinking about when I was describing it and writing my notes for this evening, I was thinking that I like when I go to the theater or to see films, I like to sit very close. I like to sit like in the 10th row, 8th row, 12th row. Same with film because I guess I just thought of this when I was preparing the notes. It makes me feel like I'm inside the art. Um, so, Kristen, any thoughts?
I do actually have a thought. I'm thinking a lot about the what you said about him having almost a photographic memory, or you use the term some very special delineation of texture
Yeah,
and just the quality of seeing. But then I am not a painter, but I'm also thinking that I think you have to have whatever that quality is. And then somehow I don't get how it transfers to the page.
you reminded me of
That makes
something.
sense.
You reminded me of something which I should have said before. Um, there is a difference between rendering
Mm,
and what Van Eyck is doing. So rendering, I often think of rendering as this. So rendering is something that can be taught, it can be understood. But what is going on in this painting and in really good art can't be taught. It's something different. And in his case, I do believe it's touched with some divine purpose, even though I am, if I would define divine in a more spiritual way than divine deities, deities. But there's something that is not rendering about this. Rendering means how you get the form to turn, how you realize the textures, etc., etc. But this is past that. But I don't know the right words to define that. Um, I want to get more people involved. Mary, do you have a comment? You don't have to, or you can. I can't hear you. Okay, okay, okay. You're muted.
Here it is. There it is.
Okay.
Sorry. I got stuck with it. Yeah, no, it's just so beautiful. I can't believe the depth of, it seems almost like layered, pictures. It's like film or it's amazing. Beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. I'm very into this. This is very axial to me. Um, Alan, what do you think?
I was actually impressed with the Van Eyck painting for a couple of reasons, but mainly what got me was the symmetry. And I was wondering if the symmetry not only of the entire piece, but even that centerpiece with the lamb itself was very, symmetric. And your triptych is also somewhat symmetric. Is that a generally a factor in creating a triptych, or is just
I don't think so. Well, it might be, but I don't think that that's. makes it a triptych. It just maybe people who are drawn to that are drawn to symmetry, but it doesn't have to be. But yes, but it is speaking to one another in a way. Like Adam speaks to Eve, even though they're far away from each other. Am I? Can you say more, Alan? Can you say more?
Well, I was just going to, say to me, something that's symmetrical is it's kind of very easy to look at, and it's like all is well in the world. Uh, it's so I don't know. I don't know maybe as a religious piece that might be an important factor, I would think. But no, I understand that you can obviously have triptychs that are not, asymmetric, of course.
Do you think that I'm right, that this is very architectural?
Well, in that way, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole piece is very architectural. I mean, if you just look at the forms of, the shapes of the panels and how they work together.
Yeah, the idea that was the progenitor of the ideas, the artist, or was it a cleric, or was it a philosopher, or was it a group kind of conversation? You should have this, you should have this, you should have this, that kind of thing. I haven't heard a discussion of that, but if I was an artist and I didn't have a good understanding of Christian iconography, I would want to know more. It wouldn't just be what I knew in an ignorant way. I'd want to know more about what to represent. But I've not heard any discussion of that in any of the things I've read about this. Um, well, I want to ask you one more thing, Ellen. What does it make you want to see this in person?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Great, great. Terrific, terrific. Um, okay, so one more, another person. Oh, Len, what do you think?
So four things popped out of me as we were talking through the discussion. First, it occurred to me to look up the golden mean and the dimensions of the piece and see how they fit to the golden mean. And while they don't exactly, they're close. The length is actually 12% short of the golden mean. Second, I was wondering if George Tooker was influenced by work of this period, because when I look at the singing women, I see the repetition of the facial features exactly like you see in almost all of Tooker's paintings.
That's brilliant. I never thought of that. Never.
Third, I noticed that Adam and Eve are covering up, suggesting it's after the fall. I found that interesting. And lastly, I don't know if you could see the detail, but the lamb's breast was punctured and blood was flowing into a goblet,
Yeah,
evoking the Eucharist or Holy Communion.
yeah, yeah. Um, Let me see. Frank, any questions or thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating and beautiful work. I definitely would love to see it. I was really taken with that photo you showed, given how the showing the size compared to the people in the
Yes,
room. I
yes, yes.
was really surprised to see that. But the detail that you pointed out, like the distance detail, I thought was really stunning. And you mentioned it was novelistic. I think Mary mentioned it was film-like. It seems cinematic, like the images that were painted above Adam and Eve
Yeah.
were like sculptured scenes that you might see in a church. Certainly, it's an altarpiece, but there were just so many things and scenes and people to explore, and that idea of the flying eyeball, just presenting all of that distant detail. It's just so much to take in.
I'm not sure if you should quote me on what I've said. I might be hauled away.
I'll just keep that to myself.
Uh, Anna, any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just trying to. Did he do this by himself? Because I've been thinking about 7 years, and it just seems like it would take much, much longer than that. It's
Yes,
so
yes.
detailed, and
That's a good. That's a good point. I wasn't thinking of how long it would take. Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
he said 7 years, and
they're saying 7 years. Yeah, yeah,
it doesn't seem like a long time for what
yeah.
detail is in there and the fineness, and if he started with the drawing and then I don't know, it's just unbelievable.
I should mention, Anna, that Ghent is very close to Bruges, and Bruges is it has very good art in it too of this period. But Bruges is like a wholly intact early Renaissance city. It's a fantastic city, and uh, both of those places are not that far from Paris. If I'm going to estimate, I would estimate maybe 3 or 4 hours by train. And I remember that Renee prepared a trip. We were in Paris and we visited these two places, or we were in these two places and traveled to Paris. And it wasn't that long. I mean, the time difference wasn't that great. Um, I want to make sure I get other people. Denise, what did you think?
Well, first of all, I love the look of the painting, and I was thinking that just functionally, I would guess that during certain seasons of the church or certain feast days or something, some parts of that would be closed down and some parts of that would be
Yes,
opened up. During Lent, they would probably close everything down to a more solemn look and then
yes, yes.
open it up and all that. So there's that functional thing. Uh, but as a painter, I was thinking of do you know who James Bland is in England? He's
James
a painter.
Bland.
James Bland, he's in England. Anyway, he did a Facebook post once that was very interesting because if you're just looking at something, the background, the mountains in the background, um, you don't see a lot of detail. Um, I mean, you could choose to paint detail, but it's the artist's choice what they do. So I just think this idea it kind of brought back um, that discussion to me because typically if you're just sitting somewhere, you would have to have binoculars to really capture. So that flying eye part of it was really interesting to me. And then the other thing is that we struggle a lot as painters to know what kind of detail to put into a painting. Now, maybe back in the 1400s or something, um, it was more of an imperative to put detail in because, you couldn't just go take a picture of something, right?
That's very well said. Very well said.
So maybe the artist's task back then was to do that. But on the other hand, he put in the detail of the mountains, but he also made the mountains very blue so that they at least are separated from and the color comes forward. So, you know, if you get too much detail in every aspect of a painting, pretty soon you don't have any place for your eyes to rest.
Yeah, yeah. That's not the case here. It,
Yeah, so
it
that's kind of a phenomenal accomplishment.
not phenomenal, phenomenal. And Denise, these painters were sometimes called Flemish primitives.
Hmm.
Okay, and um, you'd have to really think about what primitive means if you consider Van Eyck primitive.
Mhm.
But I think primitive
Yeah.
is getting close to what you're talking about. That you can't stop. Everything becomes important. Um, let me just keep going. Carol,
Um, I
any,
find it
any
fascinating. I guess I focused most on how modern especially the faces and the people. It's just astounding,
yeah,
really.
yeah, well said. Very well said. Um, what did you think of my analogy to a novel?
I think
A
I think
certain type of novel, a certain type.
yes, yes, I think it makes sense. I mean, that you look at that triptych and it's got depths and characters interacting and whatever you find in a novel, really. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense.
Um, Ron?
Yeah, I've been thinking about the triptych from the viewpoint of the people who would have experienced it in the 14th century, and assuming that probably the majority of them were illiterate, did not read, did not have access to ideas,
Excellent, excellent.
and that this would have been just a remarkable icon
Excellent.
and kind of crystallization of the entire world of Christianity.
Absolutely excellent. Absolutely terrific. And what you're saying brings across the idea that with an amazing and great work of art, just think of how many different ways you can enter the subject. It's mind-boggling. There's so many ways of thinking about it. Um,
People would come to this place daily for devotional activity. It would be a very intrinsic part of their lives and part of their visual experience.
yeah,
And I could imagine also that it might be used as a material for teaching by the priesthood.
yeah,
It would be very interesting to know just how it fit into the social fabric of those times.
very. Very. I wouldn't have thought of that. Very. Francis, anything to add?
Now, I was thinking that some of the panels seem to have a trompe l'oeil effect.
Yes,
And that, so in talking about the architecture and the depth, the different ways that one is brought into the painting, not all the same. So very interesting depth to it. And yes, I was already thinking of adding Ghent to add on to my next visit to France. And
oh, oh, great, great.
since
It's
I
not, it's really not that
going
far.
anyway.
Yeah, yeah, it's really not that far.
It's the opposite direction of my daughter, but it doesn't matter.
Okay.
I'd still do it. Yeah.
Uh, Dean,
Yeah, and another, everybody's thoughts are just great. I was just thinking too, kind of the I'm so interested in the appropriateness of the piece for the architecture, of the shape of the roof, the ceiling, the arches, how that you know is a perfect fit, or just the relationship between the space.
yes, yes,
How much it influenced it, and I think it's in common with the development of church music or classical music. How the space,
yes.
the reverberation would affect what music would be appropriate, and what style of music or how fast the music would go, that sort
Well
of thing.
said. Very well said. Um, now, John, did you go? Do you
No.
want to
Um,
add something?
yeah. I first off, I really enjoyed getting to know something about this painting. I had heard of it, but I hadn't really understood it as a painting, and I really did enjoy getting into it. I think one thing to know about this painting is how very, very early it is. just to illustrate that, the sponsors, the Philip the Good, the sponsor of Van Eyck for many years, this is the guy that handed over Joan of Arc. So the 100 Years' War was going on at the time that Van Eyck was working. That's how early this is. Another thing I wanted to tell you, and what I was fascinated by was what Van Eyck brought to art, the things that he moved, how he introduced certain things. He was, as I think you said, Simon, one of the first to sign his works. So here is an artist putting his name on a thing. Now this is a new function. He's saying, I did this. This is my name. I did this. So it begins to work in a new way. His
But if I could just interrupt you,
yeah,
he signs his name and then he says, "As best I can."
right, which is a bit of a play on words. As Eyck can, his name is Van Eyck, so he's having all kinds of fun with this because, of course, it's masterful. So it's a bit of a joke there, and his name is Van Eyck.
But my interpretation is he's saying, "As best I can," out of a kind of a
false humility,
a place where humility meets
mastery,
arrogance or mastery.
Yeah, absolute mastery. And I think part of the detail that we see is because he was said to be a miniaturist. So I think he was he couldn't stop himself from adding the detail. His self-portrait, the thing that is referred to as his self-portrait, believed to be a self-portrait, is said to be the first self-portrait ever. Think about that.
So it's
that one we referred to. You didn't show a picture of that, but it is. He's a man turning towards you with a big, what looks like a turban, but has a different name. So all right. So he's introduced the first self-portrait. He's signing his works. He's now, we're seeing different functions for art. It functions as a teaching device, a multimedia teaching device, like we have touched on a few times. But then, as you mentioned, Simon, the sponsor is in bright red on the front. He's not just buying his way into heaven. This is a PR exercise. He's saying, I did this for this community, and so it's working as a PR device for him. Just such an amazing piece. I wanted to say drop one little more thing about the detail. If you look at the panel, the Knights of Christ, when it's open and it's toward the center on the left, there are these armored men. There's one of them bearing a shield. If you look at the shield very closely, which you could do in this website I mentioned in the chat here, very high resolution photos, in that shield is reflected the window of the space that the piece was painted or was designed to be in. Wow. So Van Eyck incorporated the light from the actual window into the artwork. He put the light and shadow from the physical space the painting is in the artwork, and you can see he painted a reflect. Go check that out. You'll be astonished. And it goes on and on. He can't stop himself from adding the details, and yet they don't distract, which is astonishing.
John, could you send me the link to that?
Yeah.
To that, because
it's in the chat, but I can email it to you if that's a more comfortable way to do it.
Email it to me.
This is a thing that I think Belgium basically has done. They've taken the restored work and they've done high resolution. It has his other works in there too.
Yeah, no, send that to me because
Will do.
I'm not cognizant of the chat.
Yeah, no problem. This is a wonderful resource.
When I send you the recording later today or tomorrow, I'll include the link. Okay.
Yeah.
So
when they say he mastered glazes, so he didn't so much invent oil painting as he kind of reinvented it and mastered it. And some of the amazing effects that he achieved were from one after the other glaze to achieve the effects that he
That's a good
wanted.
point. I didn't get into that.
Just
he's a
unbelievable things that he could do.
He's a painter.
You can see a piece of textile where the textile has been brushed one way and brushed the other way, and he's made it possible for you to see that in paint. So,
John, let me make sure that everyone has gotten a chance.
yep, that's it. I've finished.
Rich, do you want to add something? Oh, Rich, do you want to add something?
Just quickly, one thing I'm amused or impressed by your modesty in not having to describe all the religious aspects to the painting. And
where modesty meets ignorance.
It's actually, there's a lot of religious art, obviously. So
they meet at stupidity.
Yeah, but what you add your sense of wonder and is contagious.
Thank you.
That you concentrate on sort of the graphic element of the painting, as opposed to the narrative element. And you do a little bit of both, but
yeah.
But when you meet your limits on that, you're sort of irreverent. You couldn't. Okay, someone else could do that. I'll concentrate.
No, I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like this is what I'm concentrating on. And if you ask me other questions, I won't know the answer. If you ask me questions about the textures, I understand that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Did someone not go? Did someone want to say something, a second thing that they are bursting to say?
I'd like to say how interesting it is that Adam and Eve have navels. They were not born from humans, and yet they're so detailed and perfect. And so I was trying to think. I was thinking of Ron and being a teenager and going in there. There's naked people. Probably I didn't see very many. Maybe I saw people. But so I was very interested in the religious symbolism. I don't know that I can actually identify with a lamb with blood pouring out of its breast. I'm not sure that would get to me, but this realism, I guess it's the mixture of symbolism and realism that just knocked me out. So thank you, Simon. This was wonderful.
Susan, I have to tell you, I don't have a navel.
You came out of the God cup.
If I could just add, I don't know if anyone else saw it the same, but I thought Eve looked pregnant.
Yeah, I did too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Susan, to be serious, I never heard that said before. What you said, and that's the beauty of this formatting, which is I want to encourage people to say something off the top of their head, not hesitate. And I never heard that said. I mean, I understand that when you look at the Last Supper, you see bread, Rossetti, Italian bread. You don't see matzah, flatbread. You see Italian bread.
Right.
Well, but navels. Navels. Navels.
I like navels.
I understand. That's great. Does anyone? Ron, go ahead.
I think that Adam was also nursing a sore rib cage in that pose.
You might.
You can't top navels.
Right.
That's off the charts. Anyone? I think we should end with navels. That's a good point. Well, thank you so much. So next week, the Garden of Earthly Delights. Okay. So have all your nightmares this week.
Yes.
Oh, golly.
Right.
You're gonna need to get to that for nightmares. Okay.
Okay.
Have a great week. Okay.
Thanks,
Simon.
Thank
you, Simon.
Terrific.
Thank you, Simon.
Good.
Thanks, everybody.